You are standing in a lawyer's office holding a check for $400,000, and you feel nothing. That is the part nobody warns you about. Not the grief. Not yet. Just the strange, flat silence where excitement should be. 3 years from now, you will be sitting in your car outside a payday loan office, and you will try to remember this exact moment, the moment you had everything, and you will not be able to explain how you got from here to there. That is where this story ends. Let's find out how it starts. Your name is Marcus. You are 34 years old. 6 weeks ago, your father died, and with him went a modest but stubborn fortune he built over 4 decades working nights at a freight company. He never took a vacation. He drove the same truck for 11 years. He left you a house, a retirement account, and a number that felt, for the first time in your life, like safety. Most people who inherit significant wealth are broke again within a handful of years, not decades, years. Tell me in the comments if you think that's about bad luck or something else entirely, because by the end of this, you might change your answer. The number becomes a feeling before it becomes a plan. You don't build a budget. You don't call a financial advisor. You feel rich, and feeling rich is the most expensive emotion a person can have. You pay off your credit cards. Good. You buy a truck, not because you need one, but because your father's old truck in the driveway makes you feel like you're still poor and you can't stand it. $42,000. Gone in an afternoon, replaced by a monthly payment you don't think about, because what's a car payment when you have $400,000 sitting in the bank? Rule number 1, money doesn't change who you are. It removes the friction that was hiding who you already were. Something shifts. Not in the balance, in the way you walk into rooms. Your cousin Danny hears about the inheritance before you've even buried your father. Danny has never held a job longer than 8 months. Danny calls you 3 days after the funeral, not to grieve, but to pitch you on a vending machine business he read about online. You say no. You feel proud of yourself for saying no. You don't realize this is the last time saying no will feel easy. The house of people arrives next. They don't come with pitchforks. They come with love, or something dressed as love. Your college roommate reconnects after 6 years of silence. Your sister, who hasn't spoken to you since the funeral argument over dad's tools, suddenly needs $11,000 for her son's braces. You give it to her. Not because you believe her. Because saying no to family feels like proof that money changed you, and you promised yourself it wouldn't. Rule number 2. Guilt is the most effective sales pitch ever invented, and family is its best salesperson. And then there's Ryan. Ryan is your neighbor. Ryan drives a car 3 years newer than yours, wears watches you can't identify, and always seems one deal away from something enormous. Ryan finds out about the inheritance at a barbecue, and within 2 weeks, Ryan has a proposal, a friend, a real estate flip, a guaranteed return of 30% in 6 months. Ryan doesn't ask you directly. Ryan just talks about it, casually, in front of you, letting the number do the work. 30%. In 6 months. You do the math in your head before you can stop yourself. Something shifts. Not in your bank account yet, in your certainty. You wire $90,000 to a project you've never seen, based on documents you never had reviewed, because a man who owns better watches than you told you it was safe. The first crack arrives, and with it, the refusal to hear it. 90 days later, Ryan stops answering as quickly. The updates get vaguer. Permit delays. Contractor issues. You tell yourself this is normal. Real estate takes time. You don't call a lawyer. You don't ask for documentation. Some quiet part you already knows, and that part gets locked in a room and ignored because admitting you were wrong feels worse than losing the money. Here's the part almost nobody sees coming, and it's the part you need to understand before we go any further, because if you're watching this and thinking you would never fall for that, you're already standing exactly where Marcus stood. Rule number 3. The moment you stop asking questions is the moment you've already lost. We're at the center of this story now, and this is usually where I'd tell you to keep watching for what happens next. But honestly, if these patterns are landing for you, the smarter move is to subscribe right now, because next week breaks down the exact 3 questions that would have stopped Marcus early, and you don't want to miss it before you're the one holding the check. The lifestyle inflates faster than the losses do. You don't cut back after Ryan goes quiet. You do the opposite. You take your wife to Cancun, business class, a suite with a view you photograph, but don't remember standing in. You tell yourself you deserve it. Grief deserves comfort. $6,000 in 4 days. Your father would have called this throwing dirt on a fire, but your father isn't here to say it out loud, and that silence is exactly what makes it easy. Something shifts. Not in the bank account, in the speed at which you stop checking it. The foil arrives with a different ending. Your friend Teresa inherited half of what you did, 2 years before you did. Teresa didn't buy a truck. Teresa met with a fee-only advisor within the first month, put 70% of it into index funds she didn't touch, and kept her old apartment for another 18 months out of what she called stubbornness. You used to think Teresa was cheap. Now, when you see her, she asks quiet questions about how things are going, and you give vague answers, and neither of you says what you're both thinking. Rule number 4, the people who keep their inheritance are rarely the ones who feel the richest in year 1. The debt starts wearing a disguise. You don't call it debt. You call it leverage. A home equity line against the house your father left you, because Danny, yes, Danny again, has a new venture, and this time it's not vending machines, it's a food truck franchise, and Danny has numbers on a spreadsheet that look real if you don't ask where they came from. $60,000. You don't tell your wife the full amount. That's the moment you know, somewhere underneath the numbers, that you've crossed into a place you can't easily walk back from. Something shifts. Not in what you own, in what you're willing to hide. The reckoning arrives without warning, the way it always does. A tax bill. Nobody told you inherited retirement accounts have distribution rules, deadlines, penalties. You missed one. $11,000 due in 30 days, and for the first time since your father died, you open a bank statement and actually read it, line by line, and the number staring back at you is $138,000. From $400,000. In under 2 years. You sit with that number the way you once sat in the lawyer's office, except this time the silence isn't empty. It's loud. Your wife sits across the kitchen table, and she says quietly, "Where did it go?" And you open your mouth to answer, and nothing comes out, because you realize you don't actually know. Not all of it. Not in a way you could explain to another human being. Rule number 5, you can lose money in 100 small decisions and never once feel like you made a big mistake. The strangers you never called finally get their appointment. You finally sit across from a financial advisor, not Ryan's friend, not a stranger from a barbecue, an actual fiduciary, the kind of appointment you could have made 18 months ago for free. She doesn't lecture you. She just asks to see everything. All of it. And as she goes through the statements, she says something you'll remember for the rest of your life. This isn't a story about bad investments, she says. This is a story about never being asked to slow down. Something shifts. Not in your finances yet, in your willingness to be honest about them. What's left teaches you more than what's gone. $262,000 is gone. What remains is placed, finally, the way it should have been from day one, boring, diversified, untouched. Your father's house is still yours, mortgaged now, but yours. Danny's food truck folded within a year. Ryan moved 2 states away before anyone could ask him a direct question in a room with lawyers in it. You don't tell this story at dinner parties. You tell it exactly once, years later, to your own son, when he's old enough to understand what $400,000 can do to a person who was never taught to be suspicious of good feelings. Rule number 6, inheritance doesn't test your intelligence. It tests whether anyone ever taught you to be still. The real trap was never Ryan or Danny or the truck or Cancun. The real trap was the belief that money that arrives without effort should be spent without discipline. That because you didn't earn it, you didn't owe it the same respect you'd give money you sweated for. You are standing in a lawyer's office holding a check for $400,000, and you feel nothing. If it happened to you tomorrow morning, no warning, would you call an advisor before you called anyone else? Or would you feel it first, the way Marcus did, and let the feeling make the decisions the plan should have made instead? Most people already know their answer. Most people are wrong about it.